Hi, this is Steven Slate, and today we're going to talk about EQ. Specifically, we're going to go over the four types of EQs currently available in the Slate Digital collection. The FGN, which models a very famous discrete British EQ, the FGS, which models another classic British parametric EQ found on one of the most popular mixing desks, the Custom Series EQ, which models several types of very boutique and esoteric EQs, and the Custom Parallel Lift, which is a unique parallel EQ. Between these four processors, you have an extremely wide palette of EQ that can each tackle almost any EQing goal. But as you're about to see, you can even get more power when you combine the best aspects of each of them. Let's start with the FGN. The FGN is all about color, power, and vibe. It is a strong EQ that immediately makes its presence known. And speaking of presence, when you need powerful mids, there is no better choice. Now, because we modeled all the aspects of the circuit, you're going to hear the fat sound of the analog hardware's transformers, including their rich sounding harmonics. So I'm going to give you an example of when you'd want to use the FGN. Let's take a listen to these drum tracks. So the crucial part of a drum track, regardless of genre, is the kick and snare. They need to cut through the mix, they need to be powerful, and in this scenario, they just aren't cutting it. So we'll use the FGN to help make them sound more impactful. Now we have the snare VMR loaded, and you can see we have the FGN in here. We're going to do several big boosts. We're going to boost around 3.2K. We're going to boost also in the mids, a little lower though, at 1K. And then we're going to get that bottom fader at about 80 hertz in this big FGN shelf. So let's start. Now that is already sounding way better. That snare is really powerful and it's cutting through the mix. So let's take a listen to the kick drum. And we're going to load the kick drum VMR. Again, we have the FGN here. We're going to boost a little bit at 2.4K, and we're going to boost maybe a little bit at 1.6. That's going to bring up that upper mid smack of the kick. And then of course, we're going to add some lows again at 80 hertz. Let's go. And now these drums are really sounding great. The kick and snare are going to cut easily through this mix. Let's do an A-B. Next is the FGS. Now this is a workhorse EQ that is so versatile due to its fully parametric midbands. With fully parametric midbands, we can change the shape of the equalization from very narrow to very wide. And when the bandwidths are wide, you can get some great color and punch. When they are narrow, you can get very surgical and you can scoop and notch out offensive frequencies. And the high-pass filter is very tight and yet also very natural, so you can remove a lot of the boominess from tracks. So let's use it on some electric guitars. First, let's hear them without any EQ. So these guitars have some problems. The first thing I noticed is that the upper mids don't have the bite and presence that's going to be needed to make them stick out of that mix. I also hear some kind of weird obnoxious frequency sticking out in the low mids somewhere. And the last thing I hear is that the low end in general just needs a little more bigness. So let's start out with the upper mid range. We're going to use the FGS upper mid band and we're going to add some presence and clarity. Here we go. So that's a good start. Now we got to notch out that weird thing I hear in the low mids. The way I'm going to do that is I'll start off with the low mid band at a very narrow bandwidth, and I'm going to boost and sweep the frequency to find out that weird frequency that I want to remove. Here we go. And that's it. It's right about 520 hertz. It just adds a little bit of boxiness to the signal, so we have a very narrow bandwidth. We're going to notch it out. Much more pleasant, less, of that kind of boxiness. So now let's work on the lows. So what I want to do with the lows is add a bit more bigness. I'm going to hit our bell button, which is going to change it from a low shelf to a low bell, and we're going to find a nice frequency to make some more bigness. Here we go. And there it is. Now we have a really warm, fat low end on these guitars. But the last thing we need to do is make sure they don't get too boomy so that our bass guitar is going to cut through the mix. So we'll use the FGS high pass filter. And that's a great guitar sound. Let's do an A-B. First wet, then dry. Okay, now we have the golden child, the Custom Series EQ. This one is totally unique from the FGN and FGS. It has a sleek, smooth, silky high end. The upper mids are present and musical. The low mids are warm and fat, and the lows are punchy and deep. This is a great EQ for attenuation as well, because it can really easily remove offensive tones. But it doesn't do the notch like the FGS in the last example. It's more broad, it's less surgical. This is an EQ that I'd recommend on just about anything because it's really easy to use and it's kind of hard to make things sound overdone. I'm going to show you how amazing this EQ is by playing a really problematic vocal. Here it is without any EQ.
And it's a long way down to the bottom.
So this EQ is clearly very thin, very nasal, very abrasive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take away those abrasive upper mid-range frequencies, and then I'm going to puff out that bottom and low mid, all with the custom EQ. Here we go.
And it's a long way down to the bottom. And it's a long way down to the bottom. And it's a long way down to the bottom.
And already you're hearing how this EQ works some serious magic on a vocal that almost sounded like it was unsalvageable. Now that upper mid-range annoyingness is gone and the low end and low mid sound really fat and warm. However, now that we took away the ugly upper mid-range, we're going to add another instance of the custom EQ in a series after the first one, and we're going to add back in some pretty sounding upper mid EQ. Because the boosts and attenuations of the custom series are totally unique, and in fact they're complementary, you can use a boost cut or cut boost in a series. Here we go.
And it's a long way down to the bottom. And it's a long way down to the bottom.
So we added a little bit of that pretty upper mid-range, so we took out the 4K here, added it back here, and then just for fun, I added a little bit of 15K to get some air. This vocal's ready to go into a compressor, and it's going to sound awesome now. Here's the A-B.
And it's a long way down.
For full mix, the Custom Series is also the way to go. And we can combine both the Custom Series EQ and parallel lift. So let's hear the mix without any processing first. Okay, so this mix is lacking some detail and clarity on the top end and upper mids. The low end is just a little weak, so the first thing we'll do is use the Custom Series lift on Silky and Big, and we're going to add some of that back in. Here we go. Okay, so already just those two processes really brought out the top end and low end in a very musical way. So now we're going to use the Custom Series EQ to fill in a few of the gaps. We're going to add in a little bit of 2K for some more focus on that lower portion of the upper mid-range. And then we're also going to add a little bit of 400 for some warmth in the low mids. Here we go. Now this mix has presence, clarity, and bigness. You'll notice I went back and actually added a little bit more of the big process from lift. And let's hear a wet then dry A-B. So as I said earlier, one of the most powerful features of using each EQ in the virtual mix rack is that you can use the best aspects of each EQ to truly create the most powerful hybrid processor. So let's take a listen to this unprocessed snare track. So this snare needs more impact, more bottom end power, more presence, and of course it has this kind of weird, awkward ring that we want to remove. The first thing we'll do, we'll isolate just one of the snare hits here. So we got it right there. And I want to use the custom EQ to add a nice, punchy, warm power at 200 Hertz. Here we go. So much fatter sound now with that custom EQ boost. And I chose the custom EQ there because it's a nice, clean, punchy low-end boost. If I used, for instance, the FGN low-end boost, it would have been a little bit too big and too aggressive. Now, speaking of the FGN, though, what we want from it is that aggressive, beautiful, powerful mid-range. Let's try it. And immediately the attack is really becoming present and punchy. Now on to the FGS. Let's get rid of that annoying ringy sound. So again, we found it by boosting it in our narrow notch mode, and now we'll take it away. And that's all it needed. Just a little bit of that notch to take out some of that ring. Finally, we have our lift parallel processor, and we're going to beef it up and add some presence with both processes. And now let's take a listen to that snare track. So those are the 4 EQs currently available in the Slate Digital Virtual Mix Rack. As you've heard, extremely wide variety of sounds that you can get from these EQs. Of course, we have more EQs to come, but there's so many great sounds that you can get for your mixes with these EQs. You can go to slatedigital.com to download demos of each EQ, And of course, you can get all of these plugins as well as every single other plugin we make in our Mix Master bundles. Thanks a lot for watching.